Hey guys, SickMotion here with the patch 8.24 notes. As I mentioned in my last video, I said I'd at least try to do a patch note run-through video for every patch on the YouTube channel until I can hopefully have time to do more stuff, maybe some game replays like I used to do before. But at the very minimum, we'll stick to doing these patch note run-throughs. Kind of gets my opinions and thoughts on the changes all in one place, so if anyone misses when I talk about it on stream, or if I talked about it on stream, they can come check it out here without having to scroll through or ask the same question multiple times and have to answer multiple times. Makes sense. Nico is, it says, will appear sometime in patch 8.24. She's out now. I haven't tried the champion. I read through the abilities, or I watched the video on the abilities a while back. I kind of forgot most of it. She was banned pretty much every game today. There was one game that she was played, but the game ended up kind of being a throwaway game, so nothing really ended up happening with that. All I know is that she has some pretty high AP ratios, and the mimicking champion appearances thing can be kind of interesting, but don't really have any opinion on the champion other than that. It's not like when I used to be able to go into the PBE when NA went down for maintenance and play the new champions before everyone else did and then have an idea of what they did. With the new stream times, I'm not doing that anymore, so a lot of the times I haven't played the champion yet. So we'll just dive right into the other changes. Aatrox Q no longer deals bonus damage to monsters. It had a 0.1 attack damage ratio against monsters. I didn't even realize it had that, but it helped jungle Aatrox. But what it's doing now is people taking Smite mid lane to take Raptor camp helps Aatrox do that a lot more. There's some changes later on in the patch to further address the mid lanes taking Smite, not just Aatrox, other ones as well. Akali, the duration on her Shroud is down. The max duration extension is also down. I like the wording for it. It's trying to reduce the frustration she causes her opponents, regardless if she's ahead or behind. It's just kind of, it just feels negative in general. So I'm glad they're doing something about that. I tried playing Akali quite a few times over the preseason. I just can't find a way to really enjoy her. I don't like playing against her either, but I don't think she's really a champion that I enjoy playing, so it's kind of my opinion on her. And anything, if I'm not playing her, if she gets nerfed and people stop playing her and she's frustrated to play against as it is, all power to that. Camille base attack speed has been nerfed. Her jungle clear is not the greatest until she has some AoE and damage and whatnot. She can clear this the single target camps pretty well, but has trouble with the other ones. Her big strength was clearing camps fast and then ganking with it and building pressure and momentum through the ganks rather than power farming. So that'll hurt her clears a little bit, but it still keeps intact while you're picking the champion. You're not picking her to just power farm through the jungle. You're picking her to farm camp here and there and then focus on the aggressive ganking with the interesting angles she can do. Galio got a bunch of changes here. I like what they're doing here. Galio is good in competitive play, in organized play, but not so much in solo queue. So they're taking away strengths from the competitive aspect of it so they can balance it more around solo queue. One of the really big things they're taking away from him is he no longer gives damage reduction on the target with his R, and enemies in the center are no longer knocked up for longer with his R. And because they took away that, that was the competitive aspect side of it. They made it so his dash speed on his E is faster. The wind up before dashing is a little bit slower, and it deals 50% reduced damage to non-champions now, but it'll be it's honestly really clunky and easy to dodge the way that it is, so that'll make it maybe a little bit more usable. They changed his Q as well. It's far less mana as you level it up, and the wind blast damage is a little bit higher base. The flat tornado damage no longer deals flat damage, but the max health damage that it deals is now higher. Honestly, I never really played Galio that much, so I don't really have anything to compare it to for comparison's sake. And like I said before with with Nico, I never get to go on the PBE on stream really anymore. I mean, I could, but it just seems like less point. So the same thing with this being changed on the PBE before it went live. I wouldn't have gotten to try it. And I don't play Galio that much anyway. maybe I'll give him a go during the preseason, see how it feels. But yeah, it's hard for me to really give an opinion on anything that I don't really experience or play enough to feel like I should have an opinion. Heimer's Q, the turret beam attack cooldown now actually scales with cooldown reduction. I thought it wasn't supposed to, but I guess apparently it was, and it never did. But now it will work properly. Who knows? States the actual damage rockets deal to minions instead of 60%, which was lower than the actual damage dealt due to AP scaling. And then the upgraded W rockets, it shows the damage on there. It's really not overly important if you look at it here. There's some small changes, but unless you play Heimer every single game, memorizing these small changes isn't really going to do that much for you. Here's one of the first changes that I actually just got out of a game with. Alawi, she has her ult reduced by 10 seconds at level 2 and 10 seconds at level 3 to make it 20 seconds at level 3 that it's been reduced. So her ult at level 16 is 70 seconds before cooldown reduction now instead of 90. So she is pretty reliant on her ult to get off those crazy late game situations. So it'll be up more often. The E change is really nice as well. Before, if you didn't level the E, it was off. It was on cooldown for a very long time. It's very important that you hit the E. I won't get into like the intricacies of playing her as much right here, but I will say that hitting her E was very important before, and if it was on cooldown, it would be on cooldown for a long time unless you were leveling it. But if you were leveling it, your Qs and your tentacles just in general didn't do that much damage. Now they made it so it's 4 seconds off the cooldown at level 1 of the E. It's still the same at level 5, and they made it so rather than getting 2 seconds off per level that you level it up, it only gets 1. So you could still level it, but you're not getting as much out of it. Leveling the Q gives everything that she does more damage if you're hitting the tentacles. So it kind of makes the character feel like it flows a little bit better. It kind of felt awkward before that you'd want to level E, but since you're leveling the E, you don't do that much damage with your Q and whatnot. So I think that makes the character play a lot more consistently and flow a lot better. And she's definitely still really, really strong. And in the later game, she will be stronger. She'll have more opportunities to be able to do stuff. You won't have to feel like a lot of the times when I was playing Alawi later on in the game, you'd miss your E, and you'd obviously want to wait until your E's up to use your ult, but you wouldn't really be able to because it might be too late at that point. You're not going to feel as bad for popping off an ult just to pop it off to make sure that you got it off in the fight with the lower cooldown. So I might end up actually playing some more Alawi over the next couple weeks here in the preseason. Aurelia got nerfed here. Her W cooldown got increased. Basically the exact opposite of what they did with Alawi. It's now 20 seconds at level 1 rather than 16, and leveling it up takes 2 seconds off the cooldown rather than 1. The damage reduction on it at all levels used to be 50%, now it's 40%. And this is actually one of the really big changes that I felt most Aurelia players probably will feel. When you used to cast it before, if you hit targets, you got stacks of your passive, but just for casting it, you also got a stack of your passive without hitting anything. It was a way that you could tap your W when you had max stacks on Aurelia that were about to run out of her passive. And by tapping it and adding a stack to max stacks, you can't go past 4, but it reset the cooldown or the fall off of your stacks. So when you're hitting a turret, you're able to reset the timer that your passive's going to run out, keep that attack speed, and keep hitting the turret. And if you had a Sheen or a Trinity Force, get the Trinity Force proc as well. You can still do that if there's minions there to hit, but if their minion wave's dead, you won't be able to do that and keep the passive stacks up. It also, if you go down and say to do Scuttle, you stun the Scuttle with your E, which is 1 stack, you Q to it, which is 2 stacks, and then you use your W, puts you to 3 stacks. You don't get the max stacks and that extra attack speed because your W only gives you the stack, 1 stack for hitting a target with it rather than a stack for hitting a target and a stack just for casting it. So it kind of makes the way that she plays and flows a little bit different, and definitely give her a lot. You'll have to think when you're kind of going in. It's a little less easy to get your passive fully stacked up instantly now. Jax got his R, the third. Every 3 attacks he does bonus damage based on his ult level. At level 2 of his ult, it got nerfed 20 damage, and at level 3 it got nerfed another 20 damage, so every third hit is doing 40 less damage at level 3. if you have like damage stats and whatnot, you will notice this a lot less. But if you're going just kind of really tanky, you'll notice a lot more of your passive damage falling off. So it's the first change to Jax that I remember seeing in a while as far as nerf. Jax is kind of one of those champions that's kind of been the same for a very long time. I still think Jax is really going to be like really amazing, and I think split pushing in general is kind of going to be really interesting through the first part of the next season. Later on in the game, with the way that minions walk a lot faster, you will be able to be hitting towers and doing a lot more stuff rather than waiting for your next minion wave to arrive like it was before. So I think the splitting will have a lot less downtime and a lot more excitement in that playstyle, which I'm excited for because a lot of the champions I play do that. LeBlanc W cooldown 4 seconds higher at level 1, same at level 5, same thing that they did with the Lowy and Aurelia. They just made it higher at level 1, and then leveling it up takes 2 seconds off the cooldown rather than 1. Victor got nerfed. Cooldown on his Q is just up 1 second at any level. Missile damage is down slightly. It's a nerf to top lane Victor, who doesn't really build AP ratios, which I'm glad. I don't like playing Victor, and he's really not fun to play into either, so this is, in my opinion, a nice change. The cooldown on his E is 1 second shorter at all levels, and the AP ratio is 0.1 higher. The Aftershock, which is the E that goes off after the initial E if you've upgraded the hex core, is unchanged, but AP ratio on it getting a little higher kind of gives a little bit of power back to maybe AP Victor. Keep him in the mid lane, keep him out of top lane. He's not fun to play against. He's really not that fun to play top lane either, at least in my opinion. Skill shot targeting with Flash. Updated several skill shot targeting interactions with Flash used mid-cast. I'm not exactly sure what was changed. There was just some changes. If a champion is affected with a debuff when they create a clone, the clone will now also have that debuff. The way that they did that because Nico does clone stuff, but that'll also affect Shaco clone, LeBlanc passive, and whatnot, and make those champions definitely with Shaco. If the Shaco say ignited and then he goes to ult, his clone will be ignited as well, so it'll be less easy to tell which one is the real one and which one is the clone for Shaco players that are good at playing that deception. So I'm sure very minor change there, but I'm sure they'll be very happy. I'm surprised it's not been in the game for so long. Some visual and sound effect upgrades for Nivea, Mundo, Gragas, Renekton, Teemo, blah, 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 and Death Dance. This is a pretty big change here. This is one of the biggest changes of the patch, in my opinion. Might just be because it directly affects me more. Many AD fighters have sources of magic damage in their kit, such as Jax. This makes Death Dance a more attractive option for them to consider without letting them run wild with pure physical damage for champs that Riven that could already pick it up. The 15% damage or healing on it used to be physical damage only, but now it's 15% of all damage dealt. It's still the 1/3 effectiveness for AoE abilities, but for example, this will proc off of Conqueror's damage now because it'll proc off true damage. So taking Conqueror and Death's Dance not going to feel as bad, because if you were doing true damage extra on Conqueror before, you weren't healing for that true damage. Things like Olaf's E, true damage, it'll heal with the Death Dance. Jax's magic damage proc on his W, on his ult, all of those things will heal with the Death Dance now. So it's basic. It's closer to Gunblade now. It still does that damage reduction thing that gives you out the damage over time afterwards, and it still gives you cooldown reduction, and it only gives you AD. So it's different than the Gunblade, but similar to the Gunblade in how it heals. I got a lot of questions about the Death Dance, how I would like it on champions such as like Olaf, such as Jax. On Jax, it could be okay, but I still think there's just better stuff to be building. And the Gunblade on Jax kind of does the same thing other than the damage reduction in the end. But the Gunblade gives you that little bit of extra burst and that sticking power with the slow, which kind of is nice. And he makes use out of the AP ratios on it as well. So champions like Jax, I'm not too sure if I would be building it on. It's an option though, is the nice thing. It's an option. And for champions like Olaf, for example, it would make your axes heal, but only for 1/3 effectiveness because they're AoE. The way I play Olaf is I get the Bork because it heals you for the percentage health damage that you're doing with the Bork, which is further increased by all of the extra healing and stuff with Olaf. I don't know if I would want to be getting the Death Dance because of that. The way that the Bork interacts with Olaf, I think, is really interesting and cool. The Cooldown reduction obviously nice on Olaf, but with what I've been taking with the Spirit Visage, Black Cleaver, and then if I get an extra 10% my runes, I'm already capped on the cooldown reduction. Maybe I'll try it on Olaf in the future. That was the one champion that I was getting a lot of questions about with it. It would kind of be cool to be healing off of your E, but your E is mainly about the damage. You're healing for a ton off of your auto attacks if you have other lifesteal sources, as well as if you're low health to be attacking faster, and with your W active. The interesting thing is that I guess you would be healing off the Conqueror damage with the Death Dance. I don't know. It'd be something to have to test, but I don't see myself switching up the lifesteal items that I like on Olaf necessarily. Eye of the Herald now goes on a 3-second cooldown during combat with non-minions, aka jungle monsters and champions, so that you don't start accidentally channeling the Rift Herald if you're trying to trinket in the middle of a fight or in the middle of like ward jumping between the jungle right after clearing a camp. You won't just start channeling the Rift Herald. I've done that a few times. It's really frustrating, and it's kind of less than just like a haha you messed up type thing. Like the Rift Herald can be like a really game changing or really game swinging item, and if you just end up popping it off, it's like a one-time use cooldown for the entire game that wasn't objective to use. Really sucks if you used it that way by accident, especially. So I like that change. Poacher's Dirk has been removed. I didn't even realize it was still in the game. No one builds it, and the fact with the vertical jungling now and a lot of invading early, people still weren't getting the Poacher's Dirk. That's kind of like the shining scenario that you would want the Poacher's Dirk, and people weren't getting it. So that kind of says it's just not really worth it. So getting rid of it makes sense. Another big change here, Dark Harvest got nerfed. Base damage got cut in half early, and then 20 damage off later on. Later on, it's more about the stacks that you got throughout the game, but getting flat 20 damage off of it early, that flat base damage is pretty much all the damage you have on it early, so that's a pretty big nerf to it. Can no longer proc off other procs like Scorch, Leandries, all of those things aside from Ludens. I mean, everyone was taking Dark Harvest. I think a lot of the people taking Dark Harvest was they were taking it because they were told to and didn't really understand it, or they were just trying to test stuff out in the preseason. I do think it was getting a little bit too rampant. Kind of felt like Thunderlords at the beginning of last season, I think it was, or whenever Thunderlords was getting taken every single game. So this will kind of make it fall back into the role it's supposed to be in, and then I guess they can tweak it further. And then there was those mid-patch changes where they nerfed the damage per soul and whatnot. Looking back to where it was before, like the release, like it was 50 base damage and 8 damage per soul, down to 20 base damage and 5 damage per soul. People are still taking it. Maybe they didn't read all of this, but if people are still taking it after all of those nerfs, you can tell that it was way too strong before. This is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about Aatrox with the extra damage to jungle monsters. The wolves used to spawn at 129 rather than 130. Raptors used to spawn at 128 rather than 130. It doesn't seem like much, but those extra 2 seconds off of Raptors, if a mid laner was going to take their Raptor camp before going into lane, those extra 2 seconds actually matter a lot. Think about if you're getting to lane just on time right as the first melee minion wave is dying, versus getting there 2 seconds after that. You miss out on all of that experience and farm. So it kind of makes the choice. If you want to do this, you can still do it, but getting the lane 2 seconds late at that time is really kind of be like photo finish type thing. Some other stuff here. They added hotkeys to interact with champions with additional buttons like Kindred's Hunt stuff and Nico's clone thing. You can now use Shift F5 and Shift F. Those hotkeys for me, like Shift F5 feels like I'm playing Twister on my keyboard. It's not the most useful hotkey. You can obviously rebind it now that you have the option though. The base key binding for that's actually kind of funny though. They also put in some of the changes. Ranked actually wasn't working today. You weren't gaining or losing LP, or at least you weren't visibly gaining or losing LP. I was at Diamond 4-0 LP all day, and it was on my Smurf that was Diamond 5 to start with. They took out the 5th division of all division, or what's the what word am I trying to say? They took out the 5th division in any kind of metal grouping, so there's no Gold 5, Platinum 5, Diamond 5 anymore. It just goes from Diamond 4 to Diamond 1 through all the ranks. They also added the Grandmaster in between Master and Challenger, and they added Iron below Bronze. So, little bit of a switch up there. We'll see how. I don't imagine it's really going to change too much, but they're putting it in the preseason to make sure there's no bugs or anything. Kind of like with the bug with how they put it in the preseason, and LP's not going up or down. That would have been far more devastating if that happened in like the first day of ranked. People would have been pretty frustrated. Also, the funny thing is, if you were in the 5th division like I was on my Smurf in any of the groupings, you then got bumped up to the 4th division, which is kind of funny. You got a free promo out of it, I guess. And then they added the ranked armor that you can go and check out in your profile. I didn't really check it out. It's not really that concerning to me. Maybe I'll look at it in the future. I honestly haven't really been too concerned with many of the changes and stuff since they switched the client over, which was years ago now. Like the visual type things like that, just they don't overly interest me as much as they used to. And then obviously a bunch of skins, as with every patch. But yeah, we'll leave it at that. A little longer than I was actually expecting that to be. I was hoping to do that in like 10-15 minutes, but kind of talked a little bit more about a few points than I expected. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Like I said, I'll be doing one of these patch note videos for every patch that comes out. Hopefully in the future I'll be doing more videos than just those on YouTube, but at the bare minimum I'll make sure to do these patch note videos and then go from there. I'm still streaming every day on my Twitch channel. I've been trying early start times for the past couple weeks. Don't know if I'll be staying with those or not, so I won't really mention anything about that in case someone watches this after it's already been changed. It's going to be irrelevant, but the start times on my stream, I always put the next stream start time as my title after I finish a stream. So right now if you go to my stream, it'll tell you when my next stream will be starting in the title. So feel free to go check that out if you haven't, or if you used to watch my stream in the past. Still going there. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy. We'll see you next time.